Are we good?
Yep, Commissioner, we're good.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Will everybody stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ralph, you want to do roll call?
Yes, Commissioner. Commissioner Dominic?
I'm here.
Commissioner Shermick, excused. Mrs. Sacco?
Here.
Mrs. Gatto?
Here.
Mayor Chelik?
Present.
Mrs. Sheridan? I didn't hear from Mary Jo and Mr. Tobin.
Present.
Okay, opportunity for the public to address the board on agenda items only. Anything?
No, again, the public had until 9 o'clock this morning to send anything in, and I did not receive anything.
Just out of curiosity, are we going to be going live soon, or are we going to keep it Zoom in depth till the end of the year, or what are we doing?
Well, that's up to the board, I guess, whatever you guys, whatever the board wants to do.
All right, well, just everybody think about it and we could talk about it. Presentation of minutes for approval from the meeting of October 13th, 2021. I'm assuming everybody's had an opportunity to review them. Does anybody, do I have a motion to approve said minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do I have on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Presentation of vouchers for examination and approval from October 13th, 2021 through November 10th, 2021 to Attorney Joseph Calbasani for $12.50, Lackawanna County Recorder of Deeds $407.50, Lackawanna County General Fund $114.20. Do I have a motion to approve those three vouchers?
Motion.
Second.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion items, land bank general update.
Okay, as far as the total number of properties sold in Lackawanna County to date, we're up to 181. In the city of Scranton, 151 conveyed to date. 143 of those to private interest or private individuals or couples. 3 to the city of Scranton and 5 to nonprofits. We have 3 properties pending right now from the board's previous action to approve their conveyance, and 1 property to be acted upon on this meeting in the city. In the city of Carbondale, 13 properties have been conveyed, and 1 property will be acted upon at this meeting. In Covington, we have sold 14 properties to private individuals or couples. That's up 7 since last month. We have 7 properties pending and another 5 that will be acted upon at this meeting. It's in Covington Township, and as everyone knows, the majority of those are up at Needle Lake. Vanling Borough, 1 property has been sold. In Troop Borough, we sold that 1 property that we trumped at the judicial sale and sold that to the borough. That has been finalized. In Scott Township, we have 1 property pending. And that's the update for property update.
Okay. The next is new interest land bank. Now I sent out, my assistant Shannon sent out follow-up emails to everybody. That was like kind of like a, hey, are you interested from the first email? And then I had asked her to find out when their meetings would be so that we can contact them prior to their meetings and just kind of see if we can show up. And she said you were working on that with her, Ralph. Is that true, or where are we with that?
I really didn't hear too much since then. If she wants me to work on it with, that's not a problem. I didn't know if Jim Rodway or her or if he was contacting some of these. And we had a little discussion about this at the advisory meeting, and Katie Gilmartin said mentioned that at the end of the year now, or the beginning of next year, with some new school boards will be taken over and some new supervisors at the various municipalities, maybe after the first of the year, I think that might be a better idea, to maybe contact them when they might have some new members that we can get some interest in, January, February.
Okay, now that you say that, I think Jim was helping her, but he's in Punta Cana currently at a wedding, so I can't talk to him today about where we're at with it. But what about the municipalities and the boroughs? You think we should wait for those too, or can we try to?
Well,
Maybe
I'm
just start making phone calls. Sometimes when I
Yeah.
cold call, it works.
right. Well, whatever you want to do.
All right. So what we'll do is for the school boards, we'll wait until after the first of the year. And for the municipality and stuff, I'm gonna just reach out and see what I could do to get them moving. Anything else?
Mayor Chelik, what's your feelings on that? Do you think there'll be like new supervisors at the various municipalities come the first of the year as well, or,
Well, when I looked at the election results, it looks like a lot of the same people are in most of the communities. I think you had some turnovers in the Abington area, but
Okay.
Sometimes you can't understand. Like we made a presentation to Carbondale Township. Did they ever come back to us?
They said they didn't have any interest at this time, maybe in the future. Yeah.
They don't realize that helping Scranton and Carbondale is helping the county. I mean, we were quite clear in our presentation.
Who said that from Carbondale Township?
Jim Rodway told me, because he has some connections up there.
All right. Our solicitor, Frank Ruggiero, he is the solicitor for Carbondale. He knows the solicitor for Carbondale Township. I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
It's Attorney Krasinski.
Okay, because there's really no downside. So I don't understand people's resistance to it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it as far as,
Okay, past real estate tax delinquencies of prospective purchasers.
okay. This is the discussion that the board has to have regarding how we want to handle this going forward. When we get an applicant to purchase a land bank property, and I review the database, and I find that they had been delinquent on properties in the past, but they're all up to date at this point. And so I don't know how the board wants to go moving forward. As long as they're paid up, are they good? If they paid everything up, a couple of months prior or a year prior, or we had quite a spirited discussion at the advisory committee meeting too. So.
Brenda, what did you were in my office and we came up with the guidelines. Do you remember? I don't have them in front of me.
Well, we came up with certain ones. I guess the board will have to decide how we move forward on them. We had stated that if you had not paid within the last year, you were out. So a year or less, so that someone can't go in and pay their taxes today and then go and bid on a property.
They have to be in good standing for a year.
Right. We also said that if the property ever went to a judicial sale, like the property owner ever had a property that went to judicial sale, they were out.
And then we made a distinction between COVID and I think we said if there was a delinquency during COVID, which would be
2020, I think.
Well, really, yeah, I guess 19 and 20. Well, it was 20, really.
Right.
20. Right. But anything before that, I mean, I don't know. I think we have to come up with kind of like some sort of what am I trying to say? Some sort of factors so that it kind of takes discretion out of it. This way, it's just easy to look at and make a determination. Does anybody have suggestions?
Joe, you
Well,
had mentioned,
again, I guess I'm in the minority. I don't feel that you should do something that's too set in stone, because I think you should give yourself the opportunity to look at the totality of the circumstances, including the fact that if, let's say you have a side lot that an owner's interested in, he made good on his taxes, he got caught up, maybe because of illness or family problems, they fell behind. If he doesn't buy the property, it's of no use to anybody else. Okay, sit there not on the tax rolls. If the board feels that looking at the totality of the circumstances, the particular person would be a good steward of the land bank property moving forward, but we have all these stringent restrictions in place, then we could tie our hands.
That's a good point.
Well, you know what I would do? You should have some rules in place. But at the end of the rules, there should be a caveat that the board can consider extenuating circumstances in the case of a particular individual.
I
agree.
That's
Yeah.
what
I agree.
Yep.
talking about. Because we have some things pending now where these people would be in those situations. They're otherwise good people. Now, if we got somebody who's a chronic scofflaw and pays their taxes at the last minute, but they have a history of always playing catch up, well, then those are factors we look at too on the negative side. But to get if we get too rigid, we're going to defeat the whole purpose of what we're trying to do. Get the properties back on the tax roll, get people taking care of them, that they're not sitting there overgrown and garbage is, you know what I mean?
So I think maybe we should do like a combination of both. Maybe have certain factors that will automatically eliminate someone who's at the extreme, who pays at the last minute just to pay it, and we know is going to take the property and either flip it or not pay it or whatever, and then have just a clause in there to what Joe said, that extenuating circumstances, or that the board can use discretion but I don't think it should be like an open discretion, because then we have to look at every single property. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like somewhere in the middle.
Like we can have, if they're delinquent on a land bank property when due, they're out automatically. Or if they have taxes that are due at the moment, they're out. So we can almost have a checklist, and then you get to the next ones, and those are the ones that we could review the circumstances.
I agree. So somebody want to draw that up, Joe?
I'll work on it with Joe.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ralph and I will work on something with it. Just so there's at the end of it, like the mayor said, that there's a clause that we have the right to accept or reject any and all bids based on the totality of the circumstances and any extraordinary circumstances of an individual purchaser, something like that.
As long as we have the terminology chronic scofflaw, I think that should be in there.
Listen, I can't say anything. Some of them are friends of mine.
All right.
And I can just jump in and say we did have a good discussion on this at the advisory committee level, and I think that's what the board is talking about right now is kind of the spirit of where we ended up, which is we don't want to put some kind of restrictive policy on the books that really takes an opportunity away. There needs to be some kind of official process or official guideline that's drawn up. But just like the mayor said, I mean, we want to be able to look at each case as it comes through, which we know Ralph already does, and be able to make a recommendation based on that situation. As I think Attorney Calvasani said, the challenge is if we're too restrictive, we might not be able to move a property that needs moved just because we only have one or two people that would ever be interested in it. And if we take them off the table, then we're not kind of using the land bank to its full potential in those cases. So as long as there's opportunities to have a discussion and make a decision based on each property, each prospective applicant, I think that's where we landed too. I think it makes a lot of sense, but obviously having something in writing is going to help us, build off of, so that people kind of know what to expect up front. And I know Pat was involved in that conversation too. So Pat, if I missed anything, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's going to be extenuating circumstances quite often. The example that I proposed was, we're going through a pandemic right now. Someone may own their property and they have the adjacent lot that they want as a side lot, but they're behind on their taxes this year because they had lost their job or they hadn't worked in 6 or 8 months. So I think every situation has to be looked at, not necessarily individually, because there do have to be guidelines, but there's also has to be room for an exception. There has to be. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of properties that could have been moved that weren't. And then, that person goes back to work.
Side, not to be pessimistic, but that's kind of my nature. On the flip side, you don't want to get us in a situation where we make a bad decision, because we're trying to get municipalities to trust this process. And we don't want to do something that's going to look like cast an unfavorable look on us and then, prevent further involvement in the land bank. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, but we also have the tax history, payment histories. Now, if someone always paid their taxes, but over the last year or so, they got behind, well, I think we have to consider that. And to exclude them specifically because they're behind on their taxes, I don't think is in the best interest of the land bank.
I guess on the flip side of that, though, if someone currently owes taxes on their property, even though they're going through a hardship, should we give them another property, which might be another burden that then they're going to owe taxes on that? So that's the only thing. Maybe we say to them, you're not precluded to do it in the future once you're current. Right. But I don't know if I
have to be current at the time of application.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
That's not negotiable.
Yeah,
Right.
but I agree with the concerns that Commissioner Dominic and Brenda have expressed about wanting to have. I think it is good for us to have some sort of concretely defined checklist, and with the caveat that the mayor suggested, where it's it's all of we ultimately have the discretion to decide based on everything taken into consideration. But I do have some concerns about, of course, being in the city with some people who may own multiple properties and have a history of being delinquent on taxes or refuse fees, and then, wanting to snap up a property that might be adjacent to some other property they own. So I do like the idea of having some defined constraints that do allow for what, everyone has been saying, special circumstances such as the pandemic. I do think if we can move it a little bit from, vague gray area toward some sort of checklist, and we're at least accounting for what we've considered.
Ralph, would these be amendments or additions to the policies and procedures?
Well, we'd have to make amendments, and
I mean, you and I could, we'll put together something, and
what we could do is potentially you can put something together and share it with the board via email, and we could even
Right.
review it
Right.
at that point and come back with comments if we had any, and then determine, we can vote on it, that those are the changes. If that
Okay.
works.
Okay. So I guess we'll move on. So
Okay.
the next agenda item is application process.
Yeah, the application process. I know we did, the board did speak about this before, about the amount of time that someone would have to have their application in prior to the next meeting. And we more or less talked about 10 full business days in order for me to notify the appropriate municipality where the property is located and just vet that, that particular property before we get it before the board 10 business days later. So if it's okay with the board, you know, we had this conversation with Brenda about 10 full days, and if the board is okay with that, you know, we can move forward with it.
Anybody else on it?
Everyone
okay
okay
with
with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Okay, all right.
Do we have to vote on it, or what do we do?
Well, if you want, somebody just want to make a motion that,
Motion.
you know,
I'll
Did I
second
just-
the motion.
Okay.
that,
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I do them, yeah.
Okay. E, sealed bid process during virtual meetings.
okay. Yeah, when we used to meet in person, there was never really a problem if we had to open seal bids because they were open at the public meeting. But now, in order to be more transparent, or just to be transparent, Brenda and I spoke about this yesterday, about having the sealed bids come, you know, to our office no later than 4 o'clock prior to the meeting, the day prior to the meeting. And at that point, and I already talked to down in the who did I speak to?
Jermaine, you spoke with
Oh,
Jermaine
okay, right.
in the controller's
Jermaine,
office. Yes.
Jermaine. I spoke with Jermaine in the controller's office, and somebody from their office will come up to when it's time to open up the bid, just to witness, to make sure we're transparent on these bids. Okay. Is everyone okay with that?
I'm okay with it.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, so we make a motion for that?
The motion is. for
Ralph,
the-
can I ask a quick question? So
Sure.
when you get the bids in, you're stamping date and time of receipt?
Yeah, we will. Yep.
Leaving them sealed? Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve that process?
Motion.
Do I have a
Second.
second on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Letter F, bid openings if necessary.
Okay, we don't have any bid openings.
Okay. Last, advisory committee and general property discussion.
Okay, yeah, we reviewed all these properties. I believe everyone has the color photos of the properties that the board is going to act on today, and the advisory committee reviewed everything. And Jess, if you want to just
Yeah,
you still there?
we looked at, yes, we looked at all the properties, discussed them, and the committee recommended moving on all these properties as presented.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
really cut and dry. There's 5 of them up in Covington Township, 1 in Fell Township, and 1 in Scranton. So, Commissioner, if you just, I don't know if you just want to move ahead with
Yeah.
the resolutions.
Yeah, 7 action items, new business, resolution number 21-036. Approving the acquisition of additional property from the tax claim office repository list of unsold property. The parcels at issue here are Chipmunk Lane, WL4-276 in Covington Township, Skyview Drive A2-90 Covington Township, Dogwood Lane WD3-418 Covington Township, Dogwood Lane WD3-419 Covington Township, Fiesta Drive R3-318 Covington Township, 204 Morse Avenue in Fell Township, 113 to 115 South Bromley Avenue in Scranton. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 21-036?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Resolution 21-037, approving the conveyance of certain land bank owned property under the property purchase program.
Excuse me,
These
Commissioner, before we move forward, I'm just, I should have asked, does anyone have any questions after looking at these properties? If they do, I'd be glad to answer any of them.
Yeah, just a question on the Fell Township. I noticed most of the maps we received, the property in question is always outlined by a thin blue line. Am I
Right.
to assume that the one in Fell Township is going by some kind of Morse code?
We saw that too, and I did talk to Patrick about it since he's in the assessor's office, and we're still trying to figure that out. But that is the property, right, Patrick? Yeah. I don't know if he's still there.
Pat Tobin.
I think we lost him.
Oh,
But it
okay.
has to be the property if you look at the addresses.
Right. We
Out in the middle there.
Right.
It is the property, so we can't figure that out. The assessor's office is still trying to check that out.
I was just trying to top chronic scofflaw.
Yeah. Chronic scofflaw, right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or?
I talked with Ralph yesterday about the South Bromley and got some more information, so I'm good with it.
Okay.
If we lost Pat, do we still have a quorum?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Four out of
Yeah.
7.
All right, so we'll move on to resolution 21-037, approving the conveyance of certain land bank owned property and other property purchase program. These are the same addresses that I just indicated under resolution 21-036. Each parcel is going to be purchased for $500. Does anybody have any questions? Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that a second? Okay. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Presentation of data and mapping survey in the city of Scranton.
Okay, Todd. We're finally here.
Thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, we appreciate everybody's time today. I know we tried to fit this into a board work session, and that had to be rescheduled, postponed a few times. So Ralph had suggested we just try to do this at one of our board meetings. So I just want to take maybe 10 minutes, run through some slides, but talk a little bit about a strategy and impact project that NeighborWorks was involved in, and just kind of throw some questions out there, and we'd love to hear some input from the board members on some of the things that we present here. So bear with me just 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so everybody should be able to see my slides now. So as I had mentioned, this was a project that our organization NeighborWorks was involved in recently, sponsored by NeighborWorks America. We were one of 11 NeighborWorks organizations across the country that are participated in this. And the goal for all of us was to find ways that we could use data to inform our community development strategies in targeted neighborhoods. So in our case, our organization is doing a lot of work in West Scranton right now. So that's the neighborhood that we chose to focus on. And once we had our target area set, we started thinking about, what are the things that, we could use data to help us figure out. One of those things was blight. So we know there are lots of challenges with blight in West Scranton, as there are throughout the rest of the city. As a result, we kind of set as our goal, let's the outcome we'd like to see here is that the neighborhood's physical appearance is attractive, or more attractive than it is. Once we had that outcome in mind, we started thinking about, what are the questions, we need to ask and the answers that we want to find. Things like, where are the most seriously blighted properties located in West Side? Are they owner occupied or rental? We weren't sure. What's the extent of the repairs that were needed? Are we talking about blighted properties that, just need their lawns mowed, or are we talking about properties that, might have roofs that are caving in and missing windows and doors and things like that? We also wanted to think, and ask, what's the ROI of actually rehabbing some of these properties? So, again, how far gone are they? Are these properties that, with a little bit of work, could be habitable again? With these questions in mind, we then, put our heads together and said, okay, well, what's the data that's available to us that can help us answer some of these questions? We turned first to our community impact measure project. So this is another project that NeighborWorks has been involved in West Scranton over the past several years, where we've actually done two things. We've done a door-to-door resident survey, and we've also done what are called parcel observations, where we'll send out volunteers to every property in our target neighborhood and have them make some notes about the condition of the property, whether it's vacant or occupied, if it's being used for commercial purposes or residential, and the kind of general condition. We did this in 2014. We did it again in 2017, and then most recently in 2019. And we've been able to kind of see some trends, throughout that time as well. So we had all of that data at our disposal. We also pulled from the United States Postal Service their list of vacant addresses. So they maintain a list of addresses that they can no longer deliver mail to. So we know those are vacant. We reached out to the city, got their condemnation list. So we had the list of properties that were currently condemned. Of course, we had access to the land bank owned properties. So we put those on the map as well. And the county tax delinquent repository properties. And we put all of these on a map and then did some assessments of what we found. And, one of our findings, for our purposes was that, in West Scranton, there were some kind of what we consider hidden gems, some areas of the neighborhood that, we were all kind of surprised to see were actually areas of strength. And we based that on, a few factors. One, these areas, and you can see them outlined in blue here on the slides, were areas where most of the properties were in good or excellent condition based on our parcel observations. These are also areas that had a very low vacancy rate. So I'll show you the map in a few minutes here, but the properties that you see outlined in red there are ones that are vacant properties. So inside the blue areas, you can see there are few, if none, that are vacant. There are also a few condemned properties. So those are the ones that you see highlighted or outlined in gold, yellow there. These areas also had pretty high home ownership rates, which is also a good indication that, it's a good neighborhood. And that information, is helpful to us as, we're doing our broader work in West Scranton. But that also got, our team to thinking about the implications for the land. I should have mentioned, in addition to some of our NeighborWorks staff, myself and Jesse, who are involved in this project, we also had Mary Pat Ward, who at the time was in the City of Scranton's Office of Economic Community Development. We also had Michelle Bannon, who's the City Clerk of Carbondale, and a NeighborWorks board member, and she's also a member of the Land Bank Advisory Board. was involved in this. So, kind of naturally, we wanted to think about not just the implications for NeighborWorks and our work in West Side, but what are kind of the broader implications for the land bank? And is there some ways that we can use data to help the land bank with its work? So what I want to do now, next few slides are just kind of, some places to start, in thinking about how data might, inform the work that the land bank's doing and the decisions that the land bank board is making. So I'll share some of our initial thoughts, and then I'd love to hear from everybody else here as well. First, I think, we talked about just using data in general to influence the work that the land bank's doing. I think just mapping, the properties as we did in West Scranton, and unfortunately we were kind of limited to West Side, but if we think about how we could kind of expand that map data for the rest of the city, maybe map properties in other communities like Carbondale that are also members of the land bank, to see where their repository properties are located, where their land bank owned properties are located, where tax delinquent properties are located. All of that could be pretty helpful as the land bank decides what to do with certain properties and where to focus its energy. There might be some areas of concentrated blight that could present some opportunities if the land bank was interested. Another thing we thought a little bit about was how this might impact a program that we've run for a few years. It's kind of been dormant the past few years, but NeighborWorks ran a program called the Scranton Homebuyer Assistance Program, not to be confused with the city's current homebuyer program, which provides down payment and closing cost assistance. This program was actually a grant program, an exterior home repair grant program. Anyone who purchased a property in the city of Scranton could apply to this program, as long as the purchase price of their home was below a certain threshold. They could receive up to $5,000 in a grant to make improvements to their new home. It was a wildly popular program, really successful. Really, the only reason we kind of put it on hold was that we ran out of funds to give out. So, and it had some good impact. But what we realized was that because there were really no restrictions on the properties that the money could be used for. There were a handful of properties that were seriously blighted that ended up kind of rehabbed using some of this grant money, but there were also properties that were in pretty good condition that the owners made some nice improvements to, but it didn't really have an impact on blight in the neighborhood. So that got us thinking to, how can we change, redesign the program a bit so that we're really tackling serious issues of blight. So, thinking about, the land bank's work now, the land bank, wasn't even in existence when this program was originally thought up. How might we kind of redesign a program like this? Could we, for instance, narrow down the list of eligible properties to the point where, maybe this grant money goes to, folks that are going to purchase a property and want to rehab it through the land bank. Maybe it's somebody who wants to purchase a tax repository property through the land bank, and we can provide a little bit of cash to help them rehab a home. Is that something that makes it a little easier to get rid of some properties back into productive use that currently are kind of being ignored? Another thing we thought about was, just some ways that the land bank might be able to encourage private development, be proactive about encouraging development. Few examples here I want to give. I think, most of you are probably familiar with, some of the work that NeighborWorks was able to do on some land bank owned properties on Luzerne Street. There's almost a whole city block of property now that the land bank owns, that were seriously blighted. They were a dumping ground. They were a mess. They're right outside of West Scranton High School. So kids would walk by every day to go to school. We heard from everybody in the neighborhood that, they wanted to see those cleaned up. Without the land bank's help though, we wouldn't have been able to make this project happen. And we've only gotten to the point where we've cleaned it up, but, by working with the land bank, with some of the properties that it already owned, it helped us acquire, or the land bank acquired another property that was kind of sandwiched in the middle that was privately owned at the time, but tax delinquent. Now we've got a stretch of land that, we were able to clean up, and, right now we don't have, precise plans for repurposing, these properties. The land bank still owns them, and hopefully NeighborWorks will be able to work with the land bank, to, turn this into some green space, possibly some housing down the road. But, this could very easily be a private development opportunity too, right? Which, in the state that the properties were in, blighted, abandoned, a mess, people might go right by and not even give them a second look. Now that they're cleaned up, there's some grass down, we got rid of all the tires and the electronics and the stuff that had been dumped there. And we've got 4 properties basically. This is a sizable piece of land now that something good could be done with, and private developer might be interested in. I want to take you now real quick to the map that we actually put together, and give you one other example here. This is kind of what we're looking at. This is our target area in West Scranton. I won't go over what all of these kind of shaded colors here mean, but I think the ones that are most important to look at here are, the tax claim repository properties, which are the ones that kind of have this red crosshatch on them, the condemned properties, which are highlighted in gold, and then the land bank owned properties, which are highlighted in green. And looking at this, one example here of how, the land bank might be able to be, a little more proactive and use this data and this map, to find some opportunities for development. One thing that kind of caught my eye was, this intersection here of kind of Fellows Street and 8th Avenue, where there are a couple of pretty sizable repository properties. One of them's vacant, so they're not getting mail there. I don't believe there's a structure on either of these, but they're kind of heavily wooded. Would certainly need to be cleared and things like that. But if the land bank, NeighborWorks, and other organization were to do some of that initial work and kind of clear the land and get it ready to turn over to somebody else, this might be a property that somebody would be interested in purchasing, putting a house on, something like that. And then I think along those lines too, there's some opportunities just looking at some of the vacant unbuildable lots that the land bank owns or in the tax repository that would make good side lots, but maybe they're wooded, they're covered, they've become dumping grounds, and might need to be cleaned up before one of the neighbors might be interested in purchasing it. And I think in addition to just mapping the information, using it for the land bank's purposes, there could be an opportunity to share that map too, kind of publicly, to encourage private investment. The information I'm sharing with all of you, might be of interest to realtors and private developers and first-time home buyers, who may look at, just a kind of paper list of all of the land bank and tax repository properties and not know where to start. But if you start throwing them on a map, and they can kind of see, where these properties are located and do a little bit of homework on them, there might be some that they would have glossed over otherwise. And then two, I think, just thinking about what the land bank might be able to do, when it comes to actually acquiring and holding some properties. I know the land bank historically, has looked for opportunities to turn over properties as quickly as possible, get them back on the tax rolls, put them back into productive use. And I think those are great goals and should be the focus of the land bank. But, I can also think of some cases where it really might be in the best interest to kind of acquire and hold some properties until at a future time something good can be done with them. I think about the work we're doing in West Side, as well as the work that United Neighborhood Centers is doing in Pine Brook. Both of our organizations have neighborhood revitalization strategies in place for these two neighborhoods. And there's some properties here like the one kind of pictured where it's a blighted kind of abandoned property. It's in the tax repository. It's very visible. It's right on Main Avenue. Probably not large enough to build on, but is really just kind of a drag on the neighborhood. I just encourage you to think about, what might the land bank's role be, with a property like this. Is it worth acquiring and holding, and maybe partnering with NeighborWorks or another organization to get it cleaned up, knowing that it's probably not going to go anywhere in the foreseeable future, but if we can get it cleaned up, it's going to have a big impact on the neighborhood, kind of going forward. I'll jump back to the map here finally. One other kind of opportunity here I wanted to point out, to kind of illustrate this example. If you go back to West Side here and take a look at, there's some properties up here around the intersection of Hampton Street and 12th Avenue that are right over by the high school and the intermediate school. Tax repository properties, there's a vacant property, there's a condemned property. Again, could this be a good opportunity? Maybe. It's right by the schools. School district might have use for some of these properties. If not, somebody privately might be interested in building a home on one of these. If it's near the schools, things like that. So I'm going to kind of leave it there, stop there, and I'd love to hear from anybody else here if you do have kind of some thoughts about any of that. We just wanted to spark a little bit of discussion here, show what we've been able to do, what could be done, by mapping some data, and see if there's any connection to the work that the land bank's doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Todd.
Todd, could you share that with the board, that presentation?
Yeah, absolutely can.
Thank you.
Ralph, Pat was trying to get back in. Were you able to get him in?
Who was trying to get back in? Pat?
Pat Tobin?
Oh,
He texted me and said that the host has to let him back in. Well,
Oh.
I mean, we're at the end now anyway, but that's okay. We got thrown out. Okay, are we ready to move on from that? Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you, Todd. I would like to share it with Eileen too. I know she probably is aware of a lot of it, but it's great to see the map and to talk about these strategies. And I even started thinking about the tiny houses that are being built by Johnson College. I mean, I don't know that would ever be, something that could be compatible with land bank and this effort, all of this good work by NeighborWorks. So.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary Jo. Yeah.
I believe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Lackawanna County has two, I believe, tiny houses through our area agency on aging. Brenda, that's right? And then I think they're in the process of getting a third.
Yes,
Awesome.
and we utilized our Act 137 affordable housing to make that application for those the Echo housing project for our older adults. So right now we have two. Potentially we could have three. We partner with Johnson College, so it's a great, and NeighborWorks was involved as well. So it's a great collaboration, and we're very proud to have that in Lackawanna County.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's good because from the elderly residents' perspective, they don't want to feel like a burden when they're living with their children or whomever. And so it still gives them some independence. But then from the people, the caretakers, living with your in-laws isn't always, I guess, I don't have in-laws, but I'm assuming it's not always the best scenario. And, people might not have the room to take in people. So I'm a big proponent of this little house effort. And I can't wait to see the first one. I can't wait.
Me too.
Exciting.
Okay, opportunity for the public to address the board. Ralph.
Again, I didn't receive anything.
Okay. All right, our next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 at 11 a.m. So having said that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.